Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
This is Let the Record Show, using common sense. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Chairman Jesse Garcia.
Good afternoon. This is Let the Record Show. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. With me is our co-host, my esteemed colleague, good friend, Jesse Garcia. Jesse is the vice chair of the state Republican Party, as well as being the chair of the Suffolk County Republican Party. And with us again is our favorite, distinguished, visiting collaborator, co-host, insightful essayist, commentator, and wonderful lawyer, Eric Levine. So, gentlemen, welcome back.
Good to be here.
And Jesse and Eric, I want to start the conversation with my first concern, which is I believe that America is at the crossroads. And I'm not at all happy being at those crossroads, because I think what's happening is this country is in retreat. And this country is in retreat. And we have to get back to a position of leadership. And we have to get back to a sense of responsibility for the international order and international peace and keeping rogue nations in line. Because if we don't do that, we're in serious trouble. The Chinese, unfortunately, have a long-term strategic plan. They don't hide it. They're proud of it. That strategic plan has to do with world domination. They are getting there. They're marginalizing us all over the map, whether in Latin America, Africa, Asia, Europe. They are winning this battle. They are playing advanced chess, and we are merely trying to figure out how to set up a checkers board. And this country is in trouble. Eric, what think you?
Well, when you talk about America at the crossroads, I think it's not just Republicans versus Democrats. I think we're really involved now in an ideological struggle in the United States. Traditionally, since the Second World War, there's been a consensus where the political spectrum generally ranged from center-left to center-right. And the real danger is that the center is no longer going to hold and that the extremes are going to take control. So you have the progressive left, you have the MAGA right, and then it's just eclipsing basically what's in the center. I think that is at the fundamental core of when you say America's at the crossroads. But where does it leave us? You have the battle between equity and equality. Equity, of course, meaning guaranteed equal results, even if you have to coercively take one person's property and give it to somebody else, versus equality, which is what we've traditionally grown up with, the Martin Luther King model of judging people by the content of their character and not by the color of their skin, and guaranteeing everybody the equal opportunity to achieve and succeed in the United States. And what each individual does with that opportunity is up to them. At its core, also, I think we're seeing a battle now between socialism and capitalism. Capitalism, fewer and fewer voices are willing to stand up and give full-throated support for the concept of capitalism, which has been the work program that has created more wealth, more jobs in the history of any program since the beginning of time. And socialism, which has failed everywhere, every time, no matter who has tried it, is the god of the left. It's the opiate of the masses on the left. Two perfect examples is the green agenda. The green climate agenda has nothing to do with protecting the climate, because we have solutions to that problem. We have nuclear power. We have natural gas, which are not considered to be green. China, India, the developing world have no interest in the climate agenda. So even John Kerry admits that even if we adopt all the provisions of the Paris Climate Accords, it would have zero impact on the climate. So why do we do it? Because it's a government takeover of the energy sector of the economy. As long as you have a crisis, you need government intervention. And this government intervention is about taking over the energy sector. Same thing we saw this earlier with Obamacare. Obamacare really did not cover any more people who did not have did not have medical coverage. It gave more people insurance, but because of the cost of the insurance, the premiums and the deductibles that people had to pay, you marginally impacted the number of people who got health care. But of course, you ask yourself, is the quality of your health care better today than it was when Obamacare was passed? No, but because it wasn't really about improving health care or delivering quality health care. It was about a government takeover of the healthcare industry. So that is in large part the battle that we're facing. That's some of the crossroads. Our educational system. We have traditional public schools failing miserably that progressives and teachers unions fight desperately to protect, versus school choice, which has been proven time and time again to provide opportunities, particularly for our minority communities, to succeed and get ahead and take advantage of the American dream. That's at the crossroads. And to achieve that, they have to marginalize parents, keep parents out of their children's education. That's at the crossroads. But I think perhaps the most fundamental crossroad we're approaching is the erosion of our institutions. Look at what's going on today with the assault on the Supreme Court, on the legitimacy of the Supreme Court. There's an interesting op-ed today in it's an editorial today in the Wall Street Journal about Senator Whitehorse of Rhode Island, who wants to impose all kinds of rules and regulations and oversight by Congress on the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is a separate and equal branch of government. Congress has no power to legislate or oversee it. But why are we doing this? Because progressives are upset that we have a conservative court. Courts swing back and forth. Before we had this conservative court, we had a very liberal court. And in time, for better or for worse, we will again have a very liberal court. But when you view the Supreme Court as a super legislature, so that if you can't pass a bill, get a law in place through the democratic process, you look to the Supreme Court to impose it on us. That's the progressive approach. Are we going to have a traditional Supreme Court, or are we going to have a progressive Supreme Court? We see it also a little bit on an assault on the Senate. This fight about the filibuster and busting the filibuster is all about taking control permanently of the Senate by progressives. That's part of the reason why they want to do away with the filibuster, which they call a vestige of white privilege, which Barack Obama used to use all the time, Chuck Schumer uses all the time, Joe Biden used to use all the time. But that's a vestige of white privilege. Why are they doing that? Because they want to do away with the filibuster now so that they can make Washington, D.C. a state, giving themselves 2 senators, making Democrats a permanent majority in the Senate. That's an assault on our institutions. Anybody who knows me or has listened to anything I've ever said about Donald Trump, I have nothing nice to say about Donald Trump. I think he's unqualified to be president, and I hope he loses the primaries and never gets into the White House. However, you can hold 2 facts in your minds at the same time. The Russia hoax was a hoax. It was made up. It was a lie. It was an attempted coup on the Trump administration in his early days in office by progressives because they wanted to attack the institution of the presidency. Voter ID, voter integrity. The Georgia bill was a perfectly wonderful bill. In fact, voting percentages went up amongst minorities. Minorities, when they were polled, said they had no problem getting to the polls. So to call that racism to prevent people from voting, it was exactly the opposite. More people voted. More people had confidence in the voting in Georgia. But what was it an attack on? It was an attack on the institution of voting in the United States to make it easier for voter fraud, to have the similar motivation behind having non-citizens being able to vote. We saw that in New York, but fortunately that was struck down by the New York courts. And it gets to your question, Richard, of how do great countries die, or what's in store for the United States? Great countries die when there's complacency, when people stop caring. And that's what we're seeing a lot of now, because people ask themselves, why bother? Countries die when they don't adopt to change. China and Russia and Iran are on the march, and we are not changing. We are not rising to the occasion to meet that challenge. We're teaching our children in our schools to hate our country. That's what is at the core of the social justice agenda. Who would want to live? Who would want to fight and die for their country if their country is systemically racist and evil? The military is having trouble getting enough people to enlist in our all-volunteer army. We have shortfall after shortfall, year after year, of people enlisting in the military because they're taught in schools it's not worth joining. We create an environment that pits one race against another. Rather than looking at ourselves as all Americans, we're black, we're Hispanic, we're whites, we're Asian, we're trans, we're gay, we're every kind of group, always through the lens of race and gender. All that does is succeed in pitting one group against another. It creates the culture of the other. This group, which claims to hate, this group that claims to want to be more inclusive, is the progressives are unbelievably divisive. That is what is at stake. That is why we're at the crossroads. There are external threats, but the internal threats are the ones that destroy great civilizations. We are self-destructive. And unless and until we solve those problems, we're not going to be able to deal with the threats that China, Russia, and Iran pose.
Very well said. Eric, Jesse, your turn.
Yes, I don't know how much I could add to what Eric just put forward, but to agree with you wholeheartedly. I think just a couple of things I want to highlight. Number one, I think as the way we were at a crossroads, we truly, for my sake, really began, as Eric pointed out, in the Russia hoax that was a coup d'etat, an attempt at a coup d'etat of the presidency in 2016. It laid the groundwork for what transpired in 20 and then in the first 2 years of the Biden administration that we currently sit in right now. And I think what was pointed out is when we talked about, as pointed out, about the assault and the destruction of our institutions of government here, but also the way we're at a crossroads is because you have an unfettered, philosophy-driven party like the Democrats that are now, as it was pointed out, they took over an entire industry. They took over an entire industry through Obamacare. They were successful in that effort, and now they are looking to take over our energy industry. And how are they doing that? They're putting these, baseless, without scientific basis type of milestones in place with the Green New Deal to eliminate natural gas and fossil fuels, which will eliminate an entire industry and actually take over an entire industry. We are at a crossroads, but and apathy is what concerns me as a party leader, and is one of the things I do on a regular basis to excite not only the base, but also speak with a common sense approach to those moderates, those that the middle of the road voters, the unaffiliated voters, to demonstrate to them how, if we are at a crossroads in America, in the state of New York, here in Suffolk County or on Long Island, wherever we may be, there is a better way of attempting to change that. And there are a battle of ideas. That's what campaigns and elections are all about. They are a debate and a battle of ideas, and to secure enough votes so we can execute those ideas. I'm fortunate that, here on Long Island, we've been very successful in, having the better ideas and then executing that. And we're going to see that hopefully even further as we go into this cycle and into 2024. But what Eric pointed out that concerns me about how do great societies and great countries die is by people not caring and apathy. That concerns me, not only as a political leader, but an American and as a father. That's what concerns me. And that's where we need to continue and never stop to reach out to our electorate, reach out to our residents, reach out to our neighbors, friends, coworkers, to ensure that this shining city on the hill, no matter how damaged it is being placed in right now by the current leadership and the vacuum of leadership, that we must not be divided internally. We must take a stand internally because the barbarians are at the gate. As was pointed out, Russia, China, Iran are on the march. They are gaining influence because our current leaders have vacated the American position of leadership here on the global stage.
Well said. This is Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia, the Republican Party, esteemed lawyer, commentator, essayist Eric Levine. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. We're taking a short break. We'll be back in a few moments with the second segment of Let the Record Show for more interesting conversation. Stay tuned, please.
This is Let the Record Show.
We're shipping Mother's Day gifts with a rapid-fire round of questions. Ready?
Yes, my gift. Can you pack it?
Yep.
Ship it.
Yes.
Guarantee it.
Of course.
Oh, send gift baskets?
For sure.
Protect electronics? Dog-proof it? Return it if they hate it?
Yes, no, and yeah.
Are you the UPS store?
Hey, we have a winner!
Visit the upsstore.com/guarantee for full details. Most locations are independently owned. Product services, prices, and hours of operation may vary. See Center for details. The UPS Store. Visit a store today.
Campfire season's back, and that means s'mores. But when you're at home treating yourself, take them over ice with Dunkin' S'mores Cold Brew Concentrate. And suddenly you're always treating yourself. The home with Dunkin' is where you want to be. Click or tap the banner to shop now.
This is Let the Record Show. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia.
This is Let the Record Show. This is our second segment. With me is my good friend, esteemed colleague, Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party, and well-recognized, esteemed lawyer, essayist, political commentator, Eric Levine. So, gentlemen, let me just make a couple of points. How do great countries die? They die because you don't have internal cohesion, and external enemies take advantage of that weakness. When we're fighting amongst ourselves, we're easy pickings for those evil empires who would destroy us and take our place in world leadership. And that's a big problem. Now, let me give you an example of a very detrimental portion of our history. And it hasn't been addressed yet properly, and it hasn't been remedied yet properly, but yet it shows how we're in dangerous territory. There's an opinion regarding abortion involving the Roe versus Wade decision. Yes. And that case was, as Eric just pointed out, the name of that case was Dobbs. And all that Dobbs preliminary draft decision said was that this is beyond the pale of the federal Constitution. There's no such thing as a federal constitutional right to an abortion, but nobody's abolishing abortion. It's up to the states to deal with the issue of abortion. And as history has turned out, there's still the vast majority of the states, there's no problem getting an abortion or getting on a bus to get an abortion to a state that will let you have it. There's no abolition of a right to abortion under the state laws. But the radical left had a narrative that abortion was being abolished nationwide. Now, what someone tried to do was to intimidate the justices of the Supreme Court of the United States into abandoning that position. So the draft of the Dobbs opinion made it clear they were going to bring it back to the states. Somebody leaked that. Justice Alito has just said in recent days he believes he knows who that was, or certainly where it came from, whether it's the individual or that portion of the staff or the chambers of the Supreme Court of the United States. That is such a divisive, horrific act in terms of judicial independence, an attempt to intimidate justice of the Supreme Court. In fact, there was an assassination attempt on Justice Kavanaugh, which very well may have been prompted by this leak. It's the height of irresponsibility. It's treasonous. It's absolutely awful. The marshal of the Supreme Court was given the responsibility of tracking this down. They have not tracked it down. We still don't know. And I believe until we know who leaked that and what his or her purpose was, this country is in trouble. This is a mystery that cannot remain unsolved. Whether we need Sherlock Holmes or Hercule Poirot or the FBI or the Justice Department, we need somebody in there to tell us the truth. Because already the disinformation campaign of the radical left is saying, oh, obviously it was the right wing who did it. Maybe it was even Alito himself. Exactly. Or Alito, who had the authorship of the draft opinion, was trying to put a target on his own back, on his fellow conservative justices. How ridiculous is that? But I am saying to you, until we solve that problem, which is emblematic, symbolic of the divisiveness in this country, we're in serious trouble. Everyone should be outraged by that. Whether you're left, right, or center, you should be outraged. Now let's pick up another point. And I want to talk about the Great American Retreat from World Leadership Responsibility. Eric, why don't you start?
Sure. There's a consensus in the United States after World War II about American exceptionalism, America's role in the world as being the indispensable nation to ensure freedom and free trade, navigation of the seas, and to keep the peace. Without the United States, none of that was possible. That all changed when Barack Obama became president, and he was asked by a reporter whether or not he believed in American exceptionalism. And he glibly responded, sure, I believe in American exceptionalism, just like the British believe in British exceptionalism, and the Greeks believe in Greek exceptionalism, which completely misses the point. His point was to say that the United States is a country like any other country with no special role. He then went on an apology tour and started bowing before kings and despots and apologizing for America's role in the world. He even apologized to the French for being dismissive and derisive. The French, who we liberated twice. There are over 9,000 dead Americans in Normandy, and Barack Obama apologized to the French. Why? Because, coming back to what we were discussing before, he believes that America is systemically racist and evil, and we need to stop projecting power around the world because that power advances that systemic racism and that evil. It's bizarre. It's really horrendous. It's ahistorical. It's afactual. And it's detrimental and has led to the beginning of the American retreat from the world stage. And we've seen this in Obama policies, and of course we're seeing it today in the Biden policies because the Biden administration is just filled with Obama retreads. Look at the red line in Syria that Obama drew. Assad still used chemical weapons. We did nothing. What was Obama's reaction? He asked Putin to bail him out. Russia had been out of the Middle East since 1973. Now all of a sudden it was there permanently and became a major player in the Middle East. Why? Why did Obama do that? Because Assad was Iran's closest Arab ally. And the Iranians told Obama that if he were to take Assad to task, that they would back out of the JCPOA. They would back out of the Iran nuclear deal. He was so wedded to the Iran nuclear deal, he gave Assad a pass. Why is he wedded to the Iran nuclear deal? It represents a fundamental shift from an Israeli-oriented Middle East, American policy-oriented, centered on Israel, to an Iranian-centered view of the Middle East by the United States. And why does he want to do that? Because from his ahistorical and afactual understanding of world events, he blames the United States for the 1953 coup, which overthrew Mossadegh and put the Shah in power. And he believes that is a sin for which America must atone. And the way to atone for that is the JCPOA, which provides for a legal path to a nuclear weapon, a ballistic missile system to deliver it, and hundreds of billions of dollars in sanctions relief that allows the Iranians to fund its military, to fund its terrorist proxies around the world. This is what happens when America is not leading. What did Obama do in Iraq? He prematurely withdrew. He withdrew, and who filled the void? ISIS. ISIS then expanded throughout the Middle East. We were forced to go back into Iraq. American servicemen and women died to retake land that they had originally died to take in the first instance. And under the Trump administration, let's give Trump credit here, we were able to defeat ISIS and defeat the caliphate. But the bottom line is that when America leaves, bad actors fill the stage, and fill the void. And we're seeing that all around the world. We're seeing it in the Middle East. We're forcing the Saudi Arabians into the hands of the Chinese, the UAE into the hands of the Chinese. We're persuading France that Macron goes to China, to Beijing, to tell the Chinese, to tell Xi that France has no dog in the hunt in the Chinese invasion of Taiwan. It's remarkable. This is the country that Obama apologized to. But Russia invades Crimea. Obama, all he did was send lunches and blankets, sent no weapons. But of course, the most catastrophic of all was the surrender in Afghanistan. That was truly the beginning of the end of the American century, if we don't reverse it and reverse it quickly. Because it told our allies, you cannot, and partners, you cannot rely on us. We are not there for you. And it told our enemies, America will not defend its interests. It will not defend its allies. It will not defend its partners. They are unreliable. There is a direct correlation, a direct link from the withdrawal and surrender in Afghanistan to the Russian invasion of Ukraine, to the Chinese threats on Taiwan, to the Iranians' attacks on American servicemen and women in Syria, and the selling of drones to Russia to help in the Ukraine war. And we see what used to be three independent actors, China, Russia, and Iran, who were interested in seeing the American-led world order overturned, now acting in concert, much like Germany, Italy, and Japan did in the 1930s. They are now acting in concert to push back and defeat and end the American-led world order. And unless and until we come back to the Reagan doctrine of peace through strength, having overwhelming military power if we choose to use it, and a credible threat that we will, this downward spiral of the United States retreating from the world will only continue, and the world will only get more dangerous.
Jesse, your turn.
I believe that what we're seeing today, as has been pointed out, is we're following up the Obama apology tour with ineptness, negligence, incompetence, and cowardice. This country has no direction and has abdicated, as has been pointed out by all three of us, its position on the global stage. It has allowed a vacuum to be filled by our enemies, whether that vacuum is being filled economically, diplomatically, financially, or militarily. It is what is going on. We need to revert back to a peace through strength persona on the global stage. We have to do that. And I am a little bit encouraged here and there, because I've been reading in different reports over the last several weeks that around Taiwan and around Russia in the Pacific Oceans, in the South Pacific, in the Asian Pacific Oceans, that there has been a demonstration of a military might. Several aircraft carrier groups have been operating and doing games, war preparations in and around Taiwan. U.S. submarines, probably the most lethal part of our arsenal in our military triad, have now been flying their flags, so to speak, as being surfaced and letting our adversaries know. I hope it's not too little too late. Just like our intervention in the Ukrainian-Russian war was a little too late. We should have been sending, not as Eric pointed out, lunches and blankets. We should have been sending weapons to that region when the incursions began. We didn't do that. We were slow in doing that. In fact, we held back some of our allies for periods of times from selling some of our military apparatus to Ukraine for the purposes of protecting them. The issue here is that unless someone wakes up and to definitely begin that process of changing the direction of our foreign policy and our military standard, our stature, we are going to be surrounded by our enemies and by proxies they have acquired economically, simply, actually.
Well, let me shift gears. Thank you, Jesse. Well said. Let me shift gears, because I was handed a document that was just sent to Christopher Wray, the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, signed by Congressman James Comer, who's the chair of the Committee on Oversight and Accountability of the United States House of Representatives. And what this document is asking for, and it's a subpoena, they're looking at allegations that while Vice President of the United States, Joe Biden, may have been involved with his relatives in a situation where he's getting financial benefits for doing governmental actions, that in essence he was compromised. Now, whether that's true or correct, I have no idea, but there's enough there that Congressman Comer, Chairman Comer, has issued this letter to the FBI. They say there's a file in the FBI that deals with this, and this committee wants to see that. Now, that's a very good segue, to my mind, gentlemen, to the following question, which is, if the name Trump had been involved in all these influence peddling deals by a child of the President of the United States or the Vice President of the United States, would everybody be going after them or be looking the other way? Because all we have now is the facts on the ground, which shows that the media was looking the other way, the FBI was looking the other way, the Justice Department was looking the other way, the political party of that candidate, the Democratic Party, was looking the other way. The intelligence community was fostering certain political narratives to undermine the political campaign of the 2020 election for the presidency. These are very serious questions. We need to know the answer to these questions. It's essential that we know the answer to these questions. Now, the former deputy director of the CIA, Michael Morrell, testified under oath that he was directed to send out the infamous and put together the 51 so-called intelligence experts, saying that the Hunter Biden laptop had all the earmarks of Russian disinformation. And that was the same letter waved at the presidential debate between Trump and Biden when Trump raised the issue about influence peddling and possible corruption. And he said, oh, no, it's all nonsense. It's a ridiculous idea. After all, 51 intelligence people, the top ranks of the U.S. intelligence agencies, have said there's nothing to it. It has all the earmarks of Russian disinformation. Obviously, the laptop is a fraud. Now it turns out the laptop is a true and genuine document. It reflects all kinds of internal documents. There's all kinds of interesting and compelling concerns. And yet, the one person who is involved in chasing up this document, this letter, the present Secretary of State, says, oh, I had nothing to do with it. Yet, under oath, Morrell said, no, this came from Blinken. This came from Blinken, Secretary of State Blinken, when he was working in the campaign, in the Biden campaign. This is very serious stuff. That means one of two people, either the Secretary of State or the former Deputy Director of the FBI, perjured themselves before Congress in testimony and are pointing the fingers at each other. We need to know the truth about this because there was an abuse and misuse of the intelligence operatives. Kevin has given us the signal. We'll take a break. This is Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg with our esteemed guest, Eric Levine, noted commentator, essayist, and lawyer. We'll be back for our third segment of Let the Record Show. Please stay tuned.
Let the Record Show is on the air.
Your snacking routine can get a little dull. Time for an Oikos remix. Like a crunchy storm of sea salt praline pretzels, dark chocolate, and butter toffee, showering down into a smooth, creamy yogurt. Enjoy 3 Oikos Remix varieties with epic mix-ins and 11 grams of complete protein per 4.5-ounce serving. See remixyogurt.com.
This is Let the Record Show. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia.
Welcome back to Let the Record Show. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party and noted commentator, essayist, and attorney Eric Levine. Changing gears, gentlemen, let's talk about this phenomenon here in New York State and going on across the country, and that is the abandonment of huge populations of productive citizens from blue states, the spiraling loss of population from blue states. And my view about this is that the state legislature in the state of New York and the city council of New York City, and indeed the governor of the state of New York, have done very little to encourage people to stay and have done a great deal to encourage people to leave. and the consequences of this population loss. The most obvious one is you're losing productive tax-paying people who provide taxes, jobs, services, contributions to cultural and charitable institutions, provide the revenues to keep the state afloat. They lose seats in the House of Representatives, which make them less important in the corridors of power in Washington to get things done for the remaining people. And has other consequences as well. It enhances this division that Eric and Jesse and I have been talking about, this division in the United States between left and right and the death of the center. Eric, what say you?
Right. So I think what you're seeing here is an embrace by states like New York of equity versus the embrace of, in states like Florida and Texas, of equality. The idea that New York and California want to guarantee equal results. Just look at the reparations bills that are being floated in California. It's going to cost California, someone estimated, $800 billion to pay reparations in a state that was never a slave state. And it's crazy for a whole host of other reasons, not the least of which it is probably unconstitutional because it's paying people just because of their race. But putting that aside, we are seeing in real time the price to be paid of the division in the country ideologically between equity and equality. And that battle is real and it has real life consequences. The people are leaving New York because their taxes are high, the crime is high, the quality of life is diminishing, there's more homeless. Everywhere you walk in New York, you're now smelling pot. So we are seeing playing out in front of our eyes this ideological battle that we were talking about before in people voting with their feet. And the more people migrate, Richard, you were hinting at this, the more people that migrate from blue states to red states. So you have fewer conservative or center right or center people in the middle staying in the blue state and going to a red state, leaving the blue state that much more liberal and progressive. The more the country becomes divided, the more the division we see between the coastal elites from D.C. to Boston, or on the coastal elites in California versus the rest of the country and the flyover country in Florida and Texas, the more divided the country becomes. This is an example of why it is critical that the center holds. But we are seeing the center torn apart by policies in states that have been taken over by the radical left and in some cases by the more conservative or radical right.
Well, and Jesse, and you're an expert on this, Jesse, because you're one of the great political leaders of this state. And I, as a House Democrat, am always saying, I want to see a strong Republican Party. I want to see a two-party system so there's a system of checks and balances politically, so that there's a system of checks and balances governmentally in terms of public policy. Otherwise, in one-party states, they rush through the worst legislation in the world that's bad for economics, bad for citizens, bad for keeping people here. And we lost 484,000 people, Jesse, in a one-year span in the state of New York. And how much did Lee Zeldin, the Republican candidate for governor, lose by?
Fewer than
330,000.
So you have to figure at least a substantial number of those people might have, if they had stayed and they were motivated, as Eric points out, by their antagonism towards this ideological push to the radical left, and they left to safer horizons, you might have had a different result in the governor's race, which would have then translated into a different result in governmental and public policy. What say you?
I agree. In fact, let's just look at the facts. I mean, these numbers are as of 2022. California lost nearly 350,000 residents. New York, about 300,000 residents in this survey. Illinois, 140,000 residents. And where do those people flock from? And other blue states, let's just point it out, like New Jersey, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, also saw large numbers of residents leave, from 64,000 to 40,000. They went to Florida and Texas. They saw the largest gains in population. Florida added, an astronomical 444,000 people, with Texas right behind it, ahead of it at 470,000 people. You see Republican states like North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, Georgia, those states now seeing increase in more of of population. And I think the key there is the legislature. The fact that the state legislatures, for the most part, are still in Republican-controlled hands, or there's a divided two-party system that helps balance these things out. Anecdotally, and we've spoken about this on many shows, it came to a point where U-Haul was one-way trips of their rentals from California to Texas. If that doesn't show you how these policies are crushing the large economic power states of our country, of our union, I don't know what else can show you that. People are voting. They're voting with their feet. Unfortunately, as you pointed out, we lost 400,000 people in the last several years in New York, and we lost the gubernatorial race by 300,000 or so. What I am concerned about is that we see that bit of a divide here in population, even in New York. You see regions such as Long Island, Rockland, Orange, and so on and so forth, those counties growing in population. You see the policies there of Republican-led governments that are demonstrating how we can keep people safe, how we can make it economically viable and affordable for families to grow, and how we encourage businesses to thrive, as opposed to taxing them to death. But I think the other key is, and then we spoke about this, I think Eric brought it up at the beginning of the top of the show, is our educational system. These parents want more of a say and more of a control, more of a say. Control isn't the right word. More of a say in the education of their children. They don't need their children indoctrinated. They need their children educated in the basic fundamental areas that we have all grown up with. And we don't need in those areas of philosophy, which is being driven by the National Teachers Union, that we should hate America, that America is not the great city on the hill, the shining city on the hill. It is not, American exceptionalism does not occur. Every great country has had its mistakes. It's had its history where things could have been done better. Except here in the United States, it's more public, and we have taken discernible steps to correct. We're not China. We're not Russia, where those same policies of oppression still exist, except they're not being spoken about.
Absolutely agreed. Eric.
Yeah, so Jesse was just mentioning the suburbs, Rockland, Nassau, Suffolk, Westchester. It's interesting what New York State is attempting to do. They're attempting to destroy the suburbs through zoning laws. They're trying to make it so that the home counties no longer have control over zoning. In my hometown of Chappaqua, we see that struggle going on every day. But an interesting group to look at in terms of this migration and how the country becomes more divided is the Jewish community. Jews in New York and California vote overwhelmingly for Democrats and progressive Democrats. If you go to Florida, the number of Jews that have left New York and have gone to Florida, Republicans get close to 50% of the Jewish vote in Florida. This is just an example of how people are moving to states to live that are more ideologically consistent and comfortable with their worldview. Jews are just one example. We're going to see it. We're seeing it across the board in all ethnicities.
You're going to see this.
You're going to see this. This is
Asian,
just going to pick.
Hispanic,
this is just,
of course.
Yeah, Asians are going to be absolutely the next. But you're just seeing this pick up momentum, and it's only going to get worse and worse. And to Richard's point, it is critical that every state is a two-party state. We must debate. We must have a free exchange of ideas. Everybody gets to speak, and the best ideas win. When you have a one-party state, nobody speaks.
This is Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party, esteemed lawyer, essayist, and political commentator Eric Levine. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. We're taking a break. Please stay tuned for more interesting conversation. We'll be back for our fourth and final segment of this week's show in just a moment. Please stay tuned.
Let the Record Show is on the air.
Last week was our first playoff game, and my plaque psoriasis was so itchy under all my gear. Sometimes just thinking about scratching could take me out of the moment. And then my doctor told me I could get clearer skin with a pill called Otezla.
Otezla apremilast is a prescription medicine used to treat adult patients with plaque psoriasis for whom phototherapy or systemic therapy is appropriate. Otezla can help you get clearer skin after just 4 months.
Okay, ready for the next game. Talking to my doctor about a pill was a total game changer.
Don't use Otezla if you're allergic to it. Get medical help right away if you have trouble breathing or swallowing, swelling of the face, lips, tongue, throat, or arms. Severe diarrhea, nausea or vomiting, depression, suicidal thoughts, or weight loss can happen. Tell your doctor if any of these occur and if you have a history of depression or suicidal thoughts. Live in the moment. Ask your doctor about Otezla. Call 1-8444-OTEZLA or visit Otezla.com for prescribing info about cost, and more.
This is Let the Record Show. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia.
All right, we're back with Let the Record Show, our final segment for this week with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg, and with us is Eric Levine, noted attorney, essayist, political commentator. Gentlemen, in my humble opinion, the border crisis is about to get worse with the abolition of Title 42, which was an explanation for holding the border back a bit, which they never really did a good job on because millions of people have been coming through, and we have no protection of the border. The border is open, notwithstanding what Secretary Mayorkas says. But they had at least a little bit of a Band-Aid with Title 42, which said because of public health concerns, you could hold people back. What everybody forgets is that there's plenty of statutory authority for the president to change the implementation of immigration law in terms of national security as well. You don't have to rely on Title 42. People forget that. I point that out for the record. Let the record show that. But last night on Katz and Cosby, we had the privilege of having Chad Wolf, who was the Homeland Secretary under President Trump. And the Biden administration is making a very big deal about having 1,500 National Guard military types go to the border, at the southern border, and that's supposed to be helpful. According to Mr. Wolf, that's very nice that you got the headline, but the reality is all they're going to do is administrative work. They're not going to be a security gap, a protection against that gap in the border. They're not going to be a bulwark against illegal immigration. They're going to just be processing these people to make it easier. And all these so-called places where they're going to have centers where they sign up, first of all, it's going to take months or years for them to be in place. And all they are is going to be processing centers to allow people to come in illegally and then be paroled. So it's more smoke and mirrors from the Biden administration. And meanwhile, the floodgates of illegal immigrants who have no right to be in this country, and we don't have the resources to take care of them, and their threats in terms of our national security, whether they're cartel members or possible terrorists, health risks, don't contribute to the economy. This is a very big deal. I'm very concerned. What do you say, Eric?
I share your concern. I agree with everything you've said. No borders, no country. I happen to be one who believes that we should be expanding our legal immigration system, if for no other reason that we're talking about Social Security going out of business, not having enough money. We need workers here who are here legally to work.
Working on the books.
Working on the books, paying their taxes, so that we can fund Social Security for people who are retiring so that the Social Security system doesn't go bust. There are many jobs that are open that people aren't filling. We need to have people here. We also, the two greatest the two greatest countries or empires in the history of the world, America isn't really an empire, but the two greatest countries in the history of the world were the Roman Empire and the United States. And what do they have in common? They both invited people from all around the known world at the time for the Romans and all around the world for the United States, the best and the brightest. Come here, have an opportunity, live the American dream, and we have all been the beneficiaries of that. Jews, Italians, blacks, whites, Irish, Asians, you name it. The best and the brightest from around the world have come here and have been entrepreneurs and made our lives and the world lives better. But just because we need people to be here does not mean we need illegal immigration. It's a national security issue. We need to know who's here. We have a drug problem that's coming across the border. And unless and until we secure it, we really can't guarantee the safety of the American people. It is quite possibly the single most important national security issue facing our country.
Jesse, your turn.
I just wish I was in the Oval Office or in the West Wing when the heads were exploding from all the aides and the senior staff of the president when they were fielding these phone calls from the progressives in the Congress about, what do you mean you're sending 1,500 soldiers to the border? What do you mean you're going back to almost embracing the Trump policy, whether it's just a figment of an imagination or a cloud? That, I think, would have been fun because, as we pointed out, number one, we've been lamenting the end of Title 42 for some time here. We knew it was going to be the last bastion that we had until we took definitive steps to protect our border, to defend our border, to actually reestablish a border on the between Mexico and the United States. So it'll be interesting to see how this goes on. And I know there was just a recent report where they said Mexico and the United States had come together on new policies or guidelines regarding immigration. I don't trust that at all. It's just going to allow these cartels and the China, created fentanyl to slip through our borders and infest and invade and kill members of our community in every neighborhood of this great country. And it's going to continue to allow gangs, and it's going to continue to allow, human traffickers and sex traffickers to continue their ill-gotten businesses at the expense of people for their profit. So it's not even a start, but it is, I guess makes a good headline that, made the heads explode in the White House.
Yeah, so the progressives' view on the border is actually really quite cynical. One of the reasons why they want the border open and to get Republicans all worked up over it is because when Republicans speak out against illegal immigration, it's an opportunity for Democrats to call people racists. You don't want illegal immigrants, you're a racist. You don't want a Mexican here, you don't like Mexicans. You don't want a Honduran here, you don't like Hondurans. It's just an excuse to be able to label people and call people racists. But I would want to remind people of something that's very important. When Barack Obama became president in 2009, he didn't just have the White House, the Senate, and the House. He had a supermajority in the Senate.
Yes,
he could have done anything he wanted. He could have passed any piece of legislation he wanted to pass. He never proposed a single immigration bill. Why? Because he did not want to solve the problem. He wants to continue to have the problem. Progressives want to continue to have the problem so they can label Republicans racists and bigots simply because they want to defend our border and the security of the United States.
Well, it's even worse than that. As we sit here talk about this amongst ourselves, you have Governor Abbott once again shipping people from Texas to New York and to other cities across the country. And you have some mayors who are now accusing Governor Abbott of being a racist because they're going to cities that are run by black mayors. Now,
these are asylum cities.
Right. You want to call yourself an asylum city, then guess what? You're an asylum city. And don't complain. It's going to cost you more money, and you can have all these social and criminal problems and these economic problems. Stop complaining, because you just said that these are sanctuary cities. These are places for asylum. And don't expect the state of Texas to absorb all this illegal immigration and say it's just swell. Everybody else, what are you complaining about? We have Texas as a dumping ground. Texas has a right to its own sovereignty. It has its right to protect its borders. It has its right to maintain its cultural integrity and to have the government of the United States enforce the laws. The immigration laws have to be enforced by the federal government. If they are not, it's an abdication of responsibility by the Biden administration, by this president, by this Homeland Security Secretary to enforce the laws, and they should not be let off the hook. I got the signal from Kevin that I have to sign off. I will say once again, there's 1,500 new people at the border in the military. It's all smoke and mirrors. It is all nonsense. It all is administrative processing. The flow will continue until the Biden administration is held accountable. This has been the Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party Eric Levine, our esteemed colleague and guest. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. I hope you enjoyed the show. We look forward to speaking with you again next week. God bless you and God bless America.
Let the Record Show is on the air.